Okay, so speaking on pride and shame and interrelated feelings, the pride of I know, uh, it's one of the, I would say, it's one of the defense mechanisms. I mean, what the core of the ego is thinking and having a personal story, an individual story. But one of the key defenses against being open-minded and to listening to others and taking instruction from others rather than coming in. It's a common defense mechanism. And one of the things that you can sort of pick up in people, especially if you're mentoring people, is before you've finished talking, they'll say, I know. And it shows pride because it's like, oh, you don't have to tell me anything. I already know everything. So, I'm already beyond what you can tell me. So that's the prideful position. Pride as well of I know. It's also an aspect of unwillingness to surrender. So it's an aspect of the ego's um, core belief system of its dominion and its authority as God over God and over all other people. So it's not willing to be open-minded to take instruction. It has no humility. So it's like a closed entity. So, and that's a defense mechanism. So it's more or less in the person is thinking, I know everything already, so I don't have to listen to anything. And so it's in a prideful position. Usually those people who say, I know, are not teachable because they think they already know everything and there's nothing you can say to them and they don't want to be teachable. So that's the prideful position, and it's a strong defense. And it's usually when one is actively engaged with the ego, it's in its own story and it's not willing to be open-minded to feedback from mentors or other people even. So yeah, so that's the prideful. But I mean, and it's a form of thinking. It's calibrating about I think 180, 190, which is very interesting. It's also the calibration of the Luciferic realms. So it's an aspect of wanting to be God. So the Luciferic pride of wanting to have a separate self, which is more powerful and more important than divinity, and definitely more important than anything anybody else can say in the world, because it has this superiority aspect to it. So it's got two aspects to it. There's the I, which is the core of the ego. They're the separate self. There's a limited me that has a story that's very important. And the aspect of no, meaning I'm God basically. I'm omniscient. I know everything already, so don't speak to me because I already know everything. And the I, which is really when one is in personal thinking, one is really in a form of narcissism. That the individual I is so important that its story is more important than being in communion with the creator. So it's a form of the individual self, which was born in the fall from the Garden of Eden. So it's also pride and the I are both forms of narcissism. Usually, when one gets a lot of pain, one becomes willing to surrender and open to God and open to instruction, and one lets go of the I know everything and don't tell me anything because I already know more than you. So aspect. So this often happens a lot in 12-step fellowships where people are very prideful and they have a little bit of pain, but they don't really want to accept instruction from anybody because they already know everything, but they're already in a lot of problems and a lot of pain. So one has to point that out to them. If you already knew everything, you wouldn't be suffering so much. Anyway, that would be trying to get one out of pride, out of denial. So, okay, so how pride relates to shame and the other emotions, guilt and everything. Well, all the ego positionalities, pride included, are a defense mechanism against um, the individual story, and also allowing, if one didn't think and have a prideful positionality, or any other positionality, fearful or an angry positionality, or a shameful, which are all personal stories. Again, that's a form of narcissism to be thinking about how guilty or how shameful or how prideful I am. It's better not to think at all. So all of those are engaging in negative stories. So otherwise, if you don't label a story, I've got shame, then it's just a feeling, it's an energy. And if you stop labeling anything and making any story about shame, then eventually it evaporates. And all the other feelings evaporate. So the stories, which are the positionalities, are a form of resistance to allowing the feelings to evaporate and the personal separate self, the individual self, the personal story to evaporate as well. So all of them for me are just aspects, different aspects of ego positionalities, ego stories. Oh, I'm going to think about how shameful I am the whole day. Oh, shameful me. Oh, guilty me. Oh, thing. It's just a form of narcissism. So that's the way I see it now today. Any thinking is narcissism and is not allowing the feelings. So if one stopped making prideful thoughts and any other thoughts, guilty thoughts, fearful thoughts, happy thoughts, because all thoughts are labeling. God doesn't really need a label for you to say this or that about feelings. Then all the repressed feelings one adopted through alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sex addiction, all prideful positionalities, all ego positionalities, all of the feelings that one had accumulated by being an ego are released. So a feeling may come up which one wants to label shame or pride or guilt, but don't label it. If you don't label it, refuse to label it, refuse to go into a story about the feeling, then the feeling will just emerge and then waft away. And hence the ego is dissolved without even having to do inventory or any kind of analysis, just by allowing things without storytelling. So I just come back because it's my passion for the moment, fast prayer. So let's say one is getting a lot of shame coming up. Oh, I'm shameful. I did this to that person when I was 12 years old, and uh, bad me, bad me, bad me. So that's a form of narcissism, just going into personal story about the feeling of, and even shame is a label. So I refuse to engage in the story of shame. I was really shameful. I hit this person when I was 10 years old. I shouldn't have hit them. Bad me. And then I refuse to do that because to think about the story is narcissism. And then I refuse to label the feeling shame or any other feeling. And then the feeling starts to come up and is released. So, but the way I do personally advocate at the moment is fast prayer. So if you get, so, yeah, you could do specific prayers if it's shame and a story around shame coming up. I surrender to God my addiction to shame thoughts, and I pray to God for forgiveness, transcendence, and miracles. I surrender, dear God, to the label of shame, that I want to call the feeling shame. And I pray to God for forgiveness. So in those ways, you're not allowing your ego to create any story, shameful story, or even label the feeling shame. And then you pray the whole day. So then all the feelings will come up. You don't allow yourself to engage in any feelings while you're doing the prayer the whole day. And then the shame and the story around the shame will eventually, and all the sub feelings around it and sub stories, because you don't allow yourself to think and you allow yourself to feel when you're doing. You don't have to feel the feelings when you pray. I've been doing it, and I've been working with someone doing fast prayer. Feelings come up like a volcano when you're doing fast prayer. So in a way, I think it's more effective than the feel the feelings technique I was teaching. So the feelings just come up as the ego's under severe battering by the fast prayer. So that's the way I would say it. But yeah, so pride and shame, um, pride and shame is a story. One, like when I was 10 years old, when I hit somebody, I feel shameful. I haven't released the shame, the story, and the feeling of shame. So it's still in me, and I'm an old man now. So you do the spiritual tool to transcend the shame and the shame story. Uh, Indulging in a shame story or a pride story or a fear story is narcissism. So if you do the fast prayer, you're not allowing your ego to engage in the narcissism of I'm afraid, I'm shameful, I'm guilty, I'm prideful, I'm apathetic. And then the feeling, you don't even allow your ego to call the feeling shame or fear or guilt or anger. And you keep praying relentlessly until all of this energy wafts off. Once the energy is wafted off and you don't allow yourself to indulge in the story for a long period of time, you won't have to do any other spiritual work to release it. It'll be released because the story, you could no longer remember it and the feelings are all gone. So shame and the story and the sub feelings around it will eventually go as well in the sub stories. The shame was related to because I was fearful, and the fear was related to because I didn't do this, or whatever the story is, and all the repressed feelings that are combined with that story. Okay, so just touting the fast prayer there again as a remedy, and I'll press